you do know that one of the outcomes that was supposed to come out of those workshops was to have a presentation of some of the insights that were shared by different stakeholders. So the workshops that we had facilitated in collaboration with TEDxLusaka were as a result of a grant that was received by TEDxLusaka from the SCORE Foundation. And today we'll be presenting some of the insights that we had gathered from the 5 sectors. So quickly, I'll just introduce myself. My name is Doreen Mwape, and I'm a Junior Innovation Associate here at Bongo Hive. And I'll just quickly run us through the agenda. So to start off with, we'll have welcome and opening remarks. So we'll just have an introduction just to have a few of the people that are in the room, and also have opening remarks from one representative from TEDxLusaka and also another representative from Bongo Hive. And then moving on, we'll now have a presentation of the summary report. So the insights that we had gathered through the 5 workshops, which were happening in agriculture, business, health, education, and law and governance. These are some of the insights that you're going to be hearing around the misconceptions, risks, and challenges that the stakeholders had shared, and also some of the recommendations that were provided. And then once that is done, we'll have an interactive feedback session. So we also want to hear from you on how this presentation is going to go, just to get feedback from you, so that even as we have more initiatives like this one, we get to improve based off the feedback that we are going to receive from you. And then we'll also have a Q&A session. So if you have any questions that you maybe will have as a presentation is going to be going on, feel free to jot them down, and then you have a session where you'll be able to ask those questions and answers will be provided to you. And then to close off the webinar, we're going to have closing remarks. So this is going to be about our 3 hours. So just to welcome everyone, hi again. So using the chat function or the chat section, it will just be good for you to introduce yourselves. And then if you're also representing an organization, just state which organization you're representing, and also which part of Zambia you're joining us from, or if you're joining us out of Zambia, it would be good to also just know where you're joining us from, and also provide one word that describes your current mood. So feel free to use the chat section and provide us with that information. We'll be on the lookout on the information that you're going to be providing in the chat section. So once again, your name, the organization that you're representing, where you're joining us from, and one word to describe your current mood. So moving on, we'll start with the opening remarks. So the first remarks are going to be given by Alice Tejiwe Kawe, who is the organizing committee member partnerships at TEDxLusaka. I will hand it over to Alice to just open with opening remarks. Alice, over to you.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, Doreen. Thank you for the introductions. Good morning, everybody. So excited to be able to be on this webinar. My name is Alice, I said, and I support partnerships with TEDxLusaka. I've been a member with TEDxLusaka as a volunteer since 2014, and we've been really excited about this collaboration with Bongo Hive, which was made possible through our collaboration with SCORE. And we're really looking forward to hearing the consolidated insights. We took the chance of having separate conversations, and what came out of all of those conversations was really this need for this interdisciplinary, intersectoral review and collaboration. So we're very excited to share all of the lessons, all the learnings that have come out of all the discussions, and explore what potential next steps there could be. So thank you everyone again for your time, your participation, in attending all of the individual sessions, and for joining us today.
All right, thank you very much, Alice, for those wonderful opening remarks. I will now move on to having opening remarks from a representative from Bongo Hive, who is Taonga Jipanda Chizuka, who's the manager of innovation here at Bongo Hive. So Taonga is going to give us some opening remarks and run us through the first bit of the presentation for the final report. Over to you, Taonga.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Yes, we're excited to be here today, and for all of you that have made the time to be a part of this webinar, we are grateful. It was a very exciting 5 sessions, hearing what people understand by AI and what some of the misconceptions and challenges are. And we hope to delve into that in detail with you today. AI in itself is something that has been in existence for quite a while, but over the last few years, there's been a lot of hype and buzz around it. So it's essential to understand what do we even mean when we talk about artificial intelligence and how can we practically apply that into our day-to-day life, regardless of the sectors that we are in. So without further ado, I will be taking us through the rest of that, at least the first part, where we will break down some of the insights that we gathered from the meetings that we had. Okay, thank you very much. Doreen, for some reason, I can't change your slide even though I'm in companion mode.
Okay, maybe can I try maybe stop sharing and then you try and share?
Let's do that. Thank you.
Okay.
Could you kindly confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Excellent. So as Alice and Doreen mentioned, this partnership was made possible by a grant from the Skoll Foundation. And in collaboration, Bongo Hive and TEDxLusaka organized these AI community workshops across 5 key sectors. So these are agriculture, business, health, education, and finally we had law and governance. And these ran between July and August of 2024. With the final one having been just about 2 weeks ago. So also, as we've mentioned, AI is a big topic right now, and this aligns with Zambia's efforts to draft an AI policy and is useful in spreading awareness and a shared understanding of what we mean by AI, but also some of the risks that can come with AI, allowing for conversations around safe adoption and safe use of AI, but also effective application of AI regardless of the sectors that you are in. So the objectives were simple: to facilitate meaningful discussions among stakeholders from different sectors, to share insights, misconceptions, and experiences regarding AI, and where possible, to identify use cases that can be applied, to enhance general understanding of AI amongst the Zambian public, and including its potential benefits and risks, and finally, to document and present the insights and strategies regarding AI to stakeholders and interested parties, which is the webinar that we are doing today. So just a rundown of the dates. As mentioned, we had the first on the 16th of July, which was agriculture, and we wrapped up with law and governance on the 9th of August. And you see all these smiling faces here from one of the workshops that we had. Okay, so without much ado, we will move straight into it. The first workshop was with the agriculture sector. And maybe just a few things to point out in terms of the methodology that we used. We integrated a human-centered design approach even in the application of the workshop. So what this meant was, it wasn't Bongo Hive or TEDxLusaka saying this is what AI is and these are the misconceptions we've observed and the risks, but rather we invited experts in different fields to be a part of the conversation and hear from them what the use cases are, what are some of the misconceptions and challenges that they have faced. So we sent out invitations to a minimum of 40 in each sector, 40 individuals in each sector from different organizations. And our target was to have at least 20 people in the room, because that would, improve the quality of conversation. Obviously, when you have diversity of views, the quality of conversation is improved drastically. We had an average attendance of about 15, so some workshops had more. And I think the lowest attended was just slightly under that. So we had an average attendance of 15. So the workshops began basically with a short video that introduced the concept of AI and its applications in the sector. just to allow for an introduction to the conversation of what AI is and to open up our minds a little bit more. And then we shared a simple word cloud where participants could then give their input based on the questions that were asked. For consistency, we asked 2 questions across the different sectors. The first was, what is your understanding of AI? And the second is what they thought the future of AI would look like based on that particular sector. And we've captured that as well in the deck, and we will show you. And then following that is when we opened it up to, conversation around misconceptions, risks, and challenges, as well as possible recommendations that came out of the conversation. So moving on to the agriculture sector, we have here in front of us the first word clouds. So how would you define AI? And the second was, what are your thoughts on the future of agriculture? And how do you envision technology playing a role in it? So for those that may not be familiar with the way the word clouds work, if a word is in bold, it means that it was mentioned several times. So you'll see here the words human, technology, future of agriculture, production, in one way or another were mentioned several times. So we have here smart systems, humans, how humans do their work, computer systems, tools or systems, human intelligence under how people would define AI, and then thoughts on the future of agriculture in relation to technology. A lot of people mentioned that they do understand or appreciate that technology will play a big role in agriculture, even as the future unfolds, including things like precision agriculture, aiding in agriculture, whether that's effective harvest or predictions, but that it will play an integral part. So we then delved into some of the misconceptions that are prevalent in the agriculture sector regarding AI. And the first was the cost. So it was evident from the discussions that AI is looked at as something that large conglomerates, large farming companies would use, but not something that the average farmer would use, or even when I say average, I don't just mean the small scale individual focused need farmer, but that even a person farming on a 2, 3, 5 acre piece of land might not be able to afford it. The second was job displacement and creativity. There is a misconception that AI is coming to take over people's jobs, and this has greatly affected its adoption. So people worry that as opposed to AI complementing human efforts, it could take over human efforts and thereby replace laborers with AI robots at some point. Another misconception was that AI is accurate. And so the predictions that it gives take or die. Which, as we may know, is not always the case, because AI also uses different learning models, and it is possible for it to have errors, which is why it's still relevant and necessary to have some sort of human supervision or oversight. And then the last was under complexity, where people look at AI as this big pie in the sky idea that is just too complex for the average individual like you or me to understand and thereby be able to use, because it requires advanced technical expertise, which the average Joe would not possess. And this misconception itself is also a limitation that hinders adoption of AI in the agricultural sector. Some of the risks and challenges that were identified were infrastructure and maintenance. So based on some of the misconceptions, but also just in general, it is evident that AI services or AI platforms and systems might need to be maintained regularly. Also, another point that comes across here is access to infrastructure such as internet services, which is what AI tools depend on. This is particularly a challenge in rural Zambia. But even so, currently in the more urban areas, with the current effects of load shedding, even on the provision of internet. So these are some of the risks and challenges that come with the use of AI. The second was regulatory and economic barriers. So it is important that while the world changes, that the regulations are changing with them. And where there is a delay in an adoption of clear regulatory frameworks, this could also negatively affect the adoption of AI. So it was felt that there is need for clear and simply put AI regulations around AI, around the sector, and also to address any economic barriers that this could also come with. We also had issues around data privacy and security. This has been a big concern, and we saw this across several sectors, actually. How is the data being stored? Where is it being stored? Is it safe to put so much of your personal data out there and just trust that it's your information and your data is safe in the cloud? And then the last was cultural resistance and knowledge gaps. It is difficult to move from what is known into what is seemingly unknown, and this could greatly affect the adoption of AI in the agriculture sector. And I believe this is applicable to any other sector. So the question becomes, how do we overcome the challenges of integrating AI into these sectors, especially for smallholder farmers and where there might be some skills gaps, in a way that doesn't make them feel that you have to have gone to school for X amount of time to be able to understand this, but also that doesn't negate the value that they bring, the wealth of knowledge and expertise that has been passed down from generation to generation. Finally, we looked at the recommendations on how we can address the risks and the misconceptions that we've discussed above. We have 3 key recommendations that came out of this session. The first was capacity building. In order for us to be able to meet the demands of tomorrow, we need to start preparing today. So what are the gaps in the skills that are needed? Is there a need for upskilling? Is there a need for reskilling? How do we get the conversation started at the right touch points, whether it's in secondary school or tertiary education? How do we boost conversations around AI and increase the confidence of people that will themselves eventually go into the marketplace and be the farmers and be the people working on farms, making adoption easier as time unfolds? The second was applying a balanced adoption. So while AI definitely plays a significant role and will continue to play a significant role, it is important to note that AI should work as a complement to human intervention and interaction, and is not necessarily, negating human involvement. So even as we create awareness, ensure that we create a balanced adoption. So on the one hand, yes, we've got the artificial intelligence and it's, being applied, but also we've got human oversight to make sure that the models are correct, that the predictions that are being given are, made based on the right data, but even more so that where there's a mistake, human oversight is there to quickly be able to pivot and not lead to devastation in terms of lost crop or, any other misadventure that could happen based on relying solely on AI without any human oversight or supervision. Okay, thank you so much. Doreen, should I proceed until the health sector before we take questions, or do we break it down sector by sector?
Maybe you could do 2 more, and then maybe we can take questions.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. All right, I'll proceed then. Just like the first format, for the sake of consistency, we started again with the word cloud after the video was showcased. So here we see, based on the question, how would you define AI? People talk about advanced technology, human intelligence, so technology with human capabilities, machine intelligence, an advanced machine. And then on the other side, when we look at what your thoughts are on the future of the business sector and how you envision technology in it. We see a lot around efficiency, rapid growth, automation, and intervention. So it's important, I think, to note that in both sectors, we can see that participants appreciate that AI will play a significant role in the future. Technology and AI will play a significant role in the future. And that is not really the debate, that there was not really need for debate in that regard, but more so how we can go about doing it and addressing some of these challenges that were faced. So after the first session, we learned and pivoted a little bit from there, which was to introduce some use cases into the discussion. So we identified, I say we, but the team identified 4 major use cases in the business sector around AI. So the first is customer behavior analysis. Some of you may be aware that AI is being used to predict different models across various businesses. For example, in banks and different fintech organizations, prediction on the likelihood of whether a customer is going to pay back a loan or not is being used. In other regards, it could be tracking behavior across different platforms to see whether a customer or an individual would likely become a customer. And even just through use of your social medias, for those of you that are on social media, the algorithms are able to predict what type of content you would find interesting. And this also has use case for business application. The second is automation of routine tasks. For some of you, perhaps you've already even seen it in your calendars. If there are meetings that come, every so often, you're able to let AI figure that out. So how can we, make ourselves more efficient by allowing AI to automate some of the routine processes and tasks in our day-to-day work? The next is under infrastructure management. So in different parts of the world, including in Zambia, the idea is that AI tools, whether it's through the use of drones or any other type of AI model, can be used to monitor the status of whether it's roads or fields, just to be able to give a wide scope, high level assessment to identify if there is need for management of the infrastructure or maintenance. And then finally, enhance cybersecurity. So AI is already being used to improve security in business for businesses across the world, and offering, even better or more efficient security from cyber threats and cyber attacks. So these are some of the use cases that were identified in this session. We moved on to misconceptions. Again, just like in the session before it, cost came up as a factor. So it was mentioned that people deem AI tools to be extremely expensive and therefore inaccessible, and not really taking advantage of some of the free AI tools that are in circulation. For example, especially around generative AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini that can be used even without paying anything for the free models. And this is true for several other applications that can provide real world value for organizations in their different fields. The second, again, which is a repetition of the one that came in the meeting before, is a fear of job displacement. So people are worried that as AI continues to evolve and improve, that eventually some jobs might be declared redundant, and robots, and in addition to that, robots will take over the application or the carrying out execution of some of the tasks. The third was around AI dominance, so that over time, as AI continues to improve, that human intelligence will be superseded and that AI will become more dominant, thereby not relying on human oversight or intervention, but really this being the one that even supervises human beings. This concern about AI dominance and also fear displacement is a clear indication as to some of the reasons that adoption has been slow in certain sectors. I'm not really going to rush to use a tool if I'm worried that if I show how efficient this tool is, it will take over my job. So these are some of the misconceptions and myths that are relevant for us to discuss and also be able to debunk, even as we continue with our discussions. The last one was narrow view of AI. So I mentioned some of the free AI tools that we could use around generative AI, but that also showcased or highlighted a gap that is evident in that many people think that AI is all about generative AI or generative tools such as ChatGPT. So for those that might be unfamiliar, generative AI is used to help you generate, as the name suggests, content. So whether it's to write a paper, to research something, whatever form of generation you need. But this has been misunderstood to be the scope of AI, which is incorrect. AI has so many more applications and tools that it can be used for, as was seen in some of the use cases a few slides above. So some of the risks and challenges, again, we saw challenges around accuracy and concerns. I won't labor on the ones that keep coming up just because I've mentioned them, and for the sake of time, if we could wrap up before 3 hours, we would like to do that so we don't keep you here too long. The second is regulatory gaps. Again, it is important that the regulations are moving along with the times. So at the regulations up to date, but even more so, it's possible to have up-to-date regulations, but they're not simplified or relevant or representative of the needs of the stakeholders. So regulatory gaps is a risk and a challenge that needs to be covered. We have security risks associated with data, as well as cybersecurity breaches and unauthorized access are also significant concerns. And then the last one that came up was around skilled experts and data. So it has been identified that there might be a need for upskilling or reskilling, so that everybody, I use the word everybody loosely, but so that we have more people that are more competent and more confident and more comfortable using AI in their different contexts and AI for different applications. Some of the recommendations that came out of the business session based on the risks and challenges identified, as well as the misconceptions, are the following. There is need for capacity building, as we have just discussed. There's also a need for awareness around AI being a tool that supports your endeavors rather than a competitor. So looking at it as a complement to your work that makes you more efficient and could improve your output and revenue, for example, in the business sector, rather than looking at it as competition to the work that you're doing. Conversations need to be had around regulatory frameworks with the relevant bodies and associations. And then also it would be good to have tailored AI solutions. As it is now, most of the AI tools that are being used are not representative of the African context, or even localized so far as to say Zambian context. So it's important that we start to pilot products that are more centered towards our local realities, whether it be Zambia or the African context, and appreciative of our business needs and realities, just to maximize the impact that AI could have in helping us accomplish our work and achieve our tasks, and for us to be able to get the value that we really can, the maximum value that we can out of these tools. Okay, thank you so much. I will move on to the third sector, which was the health sector. So the first two sessions were held in the first week, and then we had the third session, the health sector, in the second week. Just like before, we started with a video, which was followed by a word cloud, 2 word clouds. The first being, how do you define AI? And the second with a focus on AI's application in the particular sector, in this regard, the health sector. So we see here that a lot of focus was put into, a lot of focus or understanding around AI is around computers, machines, intelligent processes, use of technology. We see technology quite a bit, human intelligence, and solving of problems. And then on the other side, on what your thoughts are of the future of the health sector in regards to technology and AI, we see comments to do with health space, health systems, health outcomes, health challenges. So again, just like the sectors before it, we appreciate that there is a cognizance around AI being relevant even in this sector, and which is always a good thing to see because it makes the conversations, that much easier. So we moved on to the use cases around AI in the health sector. And some of the use cases that were identified were AI in healthcare applications. For example, in some places, AI is being used to even screen for cancer. Sorry, did you want to say something? Okay. In some instances, AI is being used to screen for cancer and other harmful diseases. We also have data management, so being able to easily pull out a patient's file and monitor their records and history without having to physically go and look for a folder in a far-flung place or a room that's layered with dust because nobody's been there in forever. But also disease prediction. So AI is helping to predict outbreaks in different environments, locations for outbreaks, and also how to manage emergency response in the case of such outbreaks. And finally, we had streamlining of operations. So how can we improve the accuracy, or rather, AI is being used to improve diagnostic accuracy, to discover drugs, and various treatment plans, as well as personalizing treatment plans based on different users in that particular category and similarities between user files and interactions. After that, we moved on to misconceptions. So there were some concerns around infrastructure. So there's a misconception that inadequate infrastructure will block AI adoption in the healthcare sector. While this to an extent might be true, it doesn't prevent people from being open to using, to learning more about the tools. So it will not block people's it will not block adoption into healthcare, but rather might slow down adoption of healthcare. But there are also already so many use cases that prove that the infrastructure, at least in its basic foundation form, exists, and there are different ways that it can be built upon to make it more useful or to make it suitable to individual, organizational, and healthcare needs. The other misconception was an over-reliance on AI. So a belief that AI is error-free. As long as it came out of this tool, this fancy tool that we are now using in the organization, then it must be correct. For those of you that might be familiar with generative AI, because it is fed, the information and predictions that it gives is based on the models and the information that it has been fed with, it is very possible where there is a limited data set for AI to give a wrong prediction or wrong information or incomplete information. So it is not accurate that AI is always correct. And then the last is around AI bias. This is also tied to the over-reliance on AI. So this misconception that we can rely on it completely, and also it gives us factual information. This isn't always true. Because it is dependent on the information that it is fed with, it is possible to have a bias. It has been noted in different parts of the world where there are biases against, for example, races or people of color. And just assuming that because you are a 43-year-old man, you already should, test for a 43-year-old Black man that you are susceptible to prostate cancer over a 43-year-old white man. In most cases, in some cases, this might be true, but there is a bias that comes based on the history that it has also been fed with. So it is important that these are checked against reliable information and data, and also that there is a layer of human supervision and oversight that is attached to it. Some risks and challenges that were identified, again, data privacy and concerns. Where is our data being stored? Where is this data being stored? Who is managing it? Is it safe? Is it being stored, for example, in Zambia even, or is it in a place in Eastern Europe? These are key concerns that sometimes contribute to hesitance in adoption of some of these platforms and tools. And another risk is undervaluing human oversight. As we have mentioned, it is important to look at AI as a complement, and not to say that human oversight then becomes irrelevant or useless, but rather as something that has the ability to make us more efficient in the way that we carry out our services and deliver our work. This is regardless of what sector. I think we've seen this so far in the agriculture sector, in the business sector, and again, now we see it in the health sector. Some recommendations that came out of this session after discussing the risks and the misconceptions are as follows. We looked at inclusivity. Inclusivity. So in order for us to ensure that we create platforms that solve the needs of the most basic, it is important that everybody is included in the conversation. So it is one thing to design a tool that helps people farm better without including the farmers themselves. So regardless of the application of the AI, regardless of the sector and its application, it is important that conversations are had with the end users. In the health sector, for example, how can we ensure that the recipients of the service that this AI tool will provide are included in the development of the AI platforms and are included in the conversations around AI? These are things that would lead to a quicker adoption. The next was under policy implementation. So we need to build trust by implementing data governance policies, improving data quality, and general policy around AI in the health sector. So we can also borrow from what's been done in different parts of the world that are already ahead of us. But it is important that we ensure that even in our borrowing of regulatory frameworks and the implementation of policies, that we are careful to refine it and to customize it to represent and reflect the needs of the African continent, but even more so of the average Zambian citizens. It is important also for us to create awareness around AI and its application amongst healthcare professionals. So this could be educating healthcare professionals, whether it is at the time of tertiary education, or even those that are already practicing in the field, to show them how AI can be a complement to their everyday work, and also the public, so that if, for example, one of the tools is being placed on you, someone doesn't think that you're trying to put a weird mark on them. I think we heard a lot of things even during COVID about different marks and all the different things the vaccines were going to do, but just raising awareness about AI and the tools and the applications, even with the general public, so that they're more open and receiving towards partnering with the healthcare providers in the use of these tools. The fourth one was around capacity building and infrastructure. We've touched on these as well in the last two sectors. It's important that we identify where the gaps are, so that we see where the need is for upskilling or for reskilling in terms of AI. So when it comes to capacity building and infrastructure, it is important that the relevant skill sets are identified and a rollout plan also. But this is not something that can be done in a silo. It would take collaboration between key stakeholders, government, healthcare practitioners, end users, to be able to do this in a way that makes sense and leads to the desired result. We also need to invest in the necessary infrastructure and the workforce that would need to do this upskilling. It doesn't just happen overnight. There must be a group that is trained for them to also go ahead and train. So these are the steps that need to be thought about. And finally, collaboration. So there is a need for collaboration amongst the different stakeholders in the healthcare sector, whether it's practitioners, researchers, tech companies, but even government, on the government side, to come together to collaborate to create tools that meet the needs of the end users and as easy to understand, easy to use, and really complement the services that are being offered in the health sector. Thank you so much for your time. I'll pause here just to take in any thoughts, any feelings from the group, any comments, questions. For those that joined us along the way, maybe just to add or to make mention again that this presentation is really just to show what insights came out of the discussions that were had. It is possible that some of you were in attendance, but for those that were not, we did say that we would share what came out of the workshops. And so the presentation so far has really tackled use cases, risks, misconceptions, and some recommendations that came out of the conversation. So this is not TEDxLusaka or Bongo Hive saying this is the way to go, but rather saying we've heard what has come out of the conversations from the experts, and these are the findings that we have. So my presentation so far has tackled the business sector, the health sector, and the agricultural sector. And my colleague Doreen will take us through the remaining sectors. I just thought that it was useful to give a recap in case anybody had questions or was wondering what you stumbled in and what was going on or where we were in the presentation.
All right. Thank you, Taonga. I can see a hand from Mr. Panda. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and good morning. I joined a little late, and thank you for that recap. Really, I think first let me commend Bongo Hive and everyone who's been involved in this work. I think really this is basically what we need to basically hear from diverse groups, diverse experts locally in terms of how or what we need to do to basically harness some of these benefits or address some of the risks that you've touched on. I just wanted to maybe just zero in a little bit more into some specifics. And really, particularly, I would like to touch on issues around capacity building and also infrastructure, perhaps even linked to some of the key sectors that we've looked into. So if you were to maybe just list down, maybe even just 3 high impact tangible interventions around infrastructure, for instance, what exactly do we need to put in place? And who needs to put this infrastructure in place? Is it the government? Is it the private sector? Are we looking for some donors that are coming to do this? But basically, what exactly do we need to put in place when we talk about infrastructure? What type of infrastructure? And are there any specifics in terms of what would work best for some of these sectors that we've looked into? And of course, I asked this question in the context of perhaps what was submitted or what was shared in some of the workshops. Capacity building, I think, is key. And I like the fact that you went into some critical specifics. You talked about, I think, be it those that would be providing the actual capacity building, whether it's in the universities, in the TVET institutions, maybe even taking it down to the broader citizenry in terms of even being able to use some of these AI tools. So the question again is similar. So if we were to basically just list 3 high impact interventions with some level of specificity in terms of what do we need to do to basically have the right skill set in our country that will either assist with developing these AI tools or basically just build our capacity in terms of managing some of the risks, be it on security, addressing issues of bias and etc. I think it's important so that at least even as we look at some of these key insights, we more or less would then be looking at some very practical interventions that we could then perhaps see how we can move them forward. So it's possible I missed it, but maybe if you could just share, just so that maybe I also catch up. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bernard. Mr. Stephen, is that in response to the question before?
Not really. It's a question.
All right, thank you. So just to address your point, Bernard, I think that's a very good point. It's good to have some tangible recommendations and a practical way to build on. I think that a conversation between multiple stakeholders will be necessary for us to, not operate in silos and ensure that it's rolled out in a way, or it's a recommendation that tackles several areas. But some things that we could do in terms of infrastructure is that for AI to work effectively, it must, use some sort of internet connectivity. So that already becomes a bit of a challenge, right? So currently in Zambia, we already had, internet connectivity in some areas of rural Zambia were not connected, but in addition to the challenge of connectivity in terms of infrastructure being set up to connect these different places, we are also experiencing now challenges with connectivity because of the infrastructure that is being, the electrical side. So in terms of infrastructure, I would say this is something that is fundamental, and the foundation would be, how do we ensure that we have internet access for everybody? Internet access everywhere you go, for everyone, everywhere you go. So that's one form of infrastructure that I'll talk about. Another key challenge or recommendation that kept coming up was around data. And the recommendation to sort this out would be, how do we solve the issue of data and ensuring that our data is taken care of and people are confident or comfortable with where their data is being stored. And this would lead to possibly a data center being built, right? So these are things that would already address tangibly some of the challenges that have come out from at least the three sectors so far, and would speak to the type of infrastructural change that would be needed. But when I say I think it would be useful to bring all the stakeholders together, this would be so that I'm not coming up with a solution that only makes sense for the health sector or for the business sector. But if collectively we, sat down with all the different stakeholders and said, okay, these are the shared challenges that we've identified, or the shared recommendations, how can we build solutions around them? I think that would lead to a more efficient way to move on. But for example, in terms of infrastructure, internet access and connectivity would be the first thing I would talk about. And another thing to focus on would be data centers. It's important that our data is being stored somewhere where we feel safe as Zambians and as Africans, that it will not be misused and we have some control over it. Regarding your second question around capacity building, I think the first step would be to train the trainers. Again, I may be wrong here, but identifying who are those that have the capacity or that we can train, that can also then trickle this down and kind of work as extension workers, if you will. I saw a hand from Parity. Parity, please, would you like to contribute something?
Thank you, Taonga. I think you've touched the point that I wanted to contribute to, but maybe just one point to add on another thing that stood out in response to that question. So when it comes to data, like we need to train our AI models using our own data. So if it's the health sector or the business sector, we need to use data that is right here in Zambia. And that means when we're building the infrastructure, like Taonga said, especially with the data centers, we need to tailor them for such, and which we of course know will need a lot of GPUs and a lot of power to manage and maintain.
Thank you so much, Parity. Mr. Bernard, I hope that helps.
Yes, yes, certainly. And thank you very much for the very insightful point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please, Stephen.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
My question is on the regulatory gap, because I've seen in almost all the sectors, there's a comment on regulatory gap or maybe regulatory challenges. So my question is that is the regulatory framework already in the pipeline, or it's out of the recommendation from the talks we have been having? That's where this that's why you now think about coming up with a regulatory framework, because with the regulatory framework, I think most of the recommendations will be covered, especially where like data privacy concerns, because the regulatory framework will obviously outline where this data will be stored.
Thank you very much for that. So the government is already in the process of drafting an AI strategy, and it is necessary that various stakeholders such as ourselves come together to have these conversations so that we can, contribute to the formulation of that strategy, and that hopefully it is then representative of the needs of various stakeholders. So there is an AI strategy that the government is currently working on, which, like you said, hopefully then helps in terms of addressing the challenges around regulatory frameworks and policies. Does that answer your question, Stephen?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other questions or contributions, please? Okay. If there's nothing else, I'll say thank you so much for your time and ask that we take a 5-minute health break. So we should be back by 10:03, please. Thank you so much.
All right, welcome back, everyone. Farron, can you just help me confirm if you're able to see the screen with the slide? Okay, thank you. So moving on, I know Taonga has covered the 3 other sectors in which we conducted the workshops, and I'll just be running us through from where she has ended from. For those that have just joined us, my name is Doreen Mape, and I'm a Junior Innovation Associate here at Bongo Hive, and I'll be running you through the rest of the sectors that have remained from the 3 that Taonga covered. So we move on to the educational sector. So for the education sector, like the other sectors, we also started the session for the workshop with the word cloud activity. So like Taonga had mentioned, for the words that you are able to see in board, they're the ones that came out the most from the participants. So from the stakeholders, I mean. So the stakeholders were answering to 2 questions, which the first one being would you define AI, and the second one being what are your thoughts on the future of education sector and how you envision technology in it. So on how they define artificial intelligence, the thing that came out the most was human intelligence, machines, AI, and also computer visions. And then for the second question, which they were answering to, what are your thoughts on the future of the educational sector and how you envision technology in it? Something that came out the most was education in Zambia, the future of education, education and space. So these are just some of the insights that were compiled from the definitions that the stakeholders were giving around AI and also how they envision technology being used in it. So for this workshop, we had 19 stakeholders that came from different education institutions. So majority of the stakeholders that we had were people like lecturers in institutions, and we also had teachers in secondary schools and also primary education. So moving on to some of the use cases that the stakeholders had highlighted, the first one being AI being used for analysis. So the insights that were shared a lot around analysis was that AI could be utilized to analyze student data and also recommend what the student would uptake. For example, maybe a student is coming from secondary school and they're trying to decide what course they would want to take when they go to tertiary education. So their data could be fed to an AI tool, and then that AI tool could be used to make a decision based off the performance that they had during their secondary education on what course they can be able to take. The second one was personalized learning. So a bit similar to analysis. I'm pretty sure if maybe you've been in a classroom, you understand that sometimes it's hard for teachers to actually understand what are the gaps in a student's performance, what are they lacking. So another use case for AI would be to feed the data of that student to an AI tool or AI system, and then that AI system would give back now recommendations to what would help that particular student improve. Another use case for AI that was identified in the educational sector was capacity building. So AI could be used to teach students either in primary school, secondary school, or tertiary education. So instead of having the traditional classrooms where you have a teacher standing in front of a classroom, we could have virtual classrooms, maybe where students have access to maybe e-learning platforms that have an AI to integrate it to them, or maybe just have an AI have explaining to them instead of the traditional classrooms that we are used to here in Zambia. And then moving on to some of the misconceptions that were highlighted. I know this one now we're a bit familiar with if you started with us from the start, which is job displacement. So people have a fear in adopting AI in the educational sector because they feel that when they fully adopt it, it will take away the jobs that they currently have. I think this maybe could be supported, this misconception is supported by what people feel if they don't have like the traditional classrooms and now students have maybe access to e-learning platforms. They feel that now students wouldn't have the need to have maybe a teacher stand in front of them or have a lecturer teach them. So there's a fear of job displacement. And then the second one was plagiarism. So lecturers and teachers had identified this being as a misconception. So there's a fear of fully adopting artificial intelligence because they feel that students, when when artificial intelligence is introduced to the educational sector, students could start using that for cheating, and then that could also now have to affect their academic integrity. And then another misconception that was highlighted was for dystopian fears. I think for most of us that have watched movies that have AI or robots, there's that misconception that people have built that when you fully adopt AI tools, they're going to take over the world and start ruling the human society. Moving on, another misconception this has also come out of the other sectors. So people feel that the infrastructure that is needed to set up an AI system that can be utilized in the educational sector, there's a lot of cost that is going to be required to set up that so that it just gets to meet the needs of the educational sector. So a cost was also a misconception that was highlighted. And then another thing that was mentioned was static and inaccurate AI. So people feel that artificial intelligence is static and also inaccurate. So speaking to static, in today's world, I think with the coming of generative AI tools, that's when people now have opened up to embracing artificial intelligence. So people feel that in the current state that we have the AI tools, even 5 years from now, that's how artificial intelligence is going to be, because we have been speaking about AI. I think AI has been in existence for like a long time. I think with the coming of generative AI tools, that's when we've really seen that AI is being utilized, but it had been in existence before that. So people feel that the growth is a little bit stagnant or static for AI tools. And they also feel that AI is inaccurate. So there were things that came out like AI hallucination, where when you prompt, for example, a generative AI to give you maybe information about Zambia, which most of our data sets here in Zambia or Africa was not really fed to these AI tools. So they feel that the information that is going to come out of those AI tools is going to be inaccurate. Another misconception was around data privacy and security. So stakeholders highlighted the concern around the data that is being fed to these AI tools. So in as much as AI tools have an agreement where you'd say this information that I have shared is not going to be shared elsewhere, people still don't fully trust that the agreement that has been made between them and the AI system that they're utilizing when they're agreeing to the terms and conditions, that their data will be kept private. Hence, they feel that the security of their information might be misused. So the misconception that came out was around data privacy and security. Then moving on to risks and challenges. So one risk that was identified was accessibility. This, I think, was spoken about in some of the sectors where we have people in the rural areas who do not fully have access to internet connectivity. They lack access to devices that would allow them to access these AI tools. So there's a thing that has to do with digital divide. And also, not just speaking of people in the rural areas, even us right now in the urban areas, we're struggling with load shedding, which is really affecting the servers that are containing our data, and also the internet connectivity is being affected by the load shedding that we are currently experiencing as a country. So accessibility is also something that was identified as a potential risk and challenge. And then moving on is inadequate infrastructure. I think this has also been highlighted in the other sectors where people feel that the current infrastructure that we have is not adequate for us to be able to interact with big AI tools or systems, or even build our own AI systems, because the computing that is going to be needed, the data that's going to be needed, the infrastructure that we currently have cannot be able to support that. So inadequate infrastructure was something that also came out in the education sector. Another risk and challenge that was identified was resource diversion. So as mentioned, I think this has been mentioned a lot of times, we're currently experiencing drought and load shedding. So now again in the world, we have this buzzword that has gone out, which is artificial intelligence. So instead of us to put our resources into maybe addressing some of the current challenges that we are facing as a country to do with load shedding and drought, now we find ourselves diverting these resources to catch up with the world in terms of AI. So there's a potential risk and challenge when it comes to resource diversion, because as a country, we have these challenges and we're also just trying to catch up with what is happening in the world. Another risk and challenge that was also identified came with cost. So we know that with artificial intelligence, there's certain hardware, there's certain software, there's also certain personnel that we require for us to be able to maintain these AI systems, that if we fully adopt these AI systems, there'll be need for maintenance, need for development of these AI tools. So cost is also one potential risk and challenge that was highlighted in the educational sector by the stakeholders. Moving on, another risk and challenge that was highlighted was lack of skilled expertise. So I think even as we were conducting these workshops, we had asked stakeholders to say which maybe lecturers or teachers here have been trained on how to utilize AI in the educational sector. And one thing that we found out is that people were just trying to figure out things on their own with the coming of generative AI tools. So the potential risk that was also mentioned was lack of skilled expertise. So we don't have the expertise to be able to utilize or fully adopt AI in the educational sector because people haven't been trained on how to utilize these AI tools. Remember, generative AI, I think, has been in the talks like, I think maybe like 2022. I think that's when really people started learning about ChatGPT, more like here in Africa, or should I say Zambia in particular. So like in the curriculum, AI hasn't been fully implemented. I know students are taking things like ICT, but I'm not really sure if they're being taught on how to utilize AI tools. So lack of skilled expertise was a potential risk and challenge that was also highlighted. Ethical concerns was also something that came out as a potential risk and challenge. So currently, the AI models that we are utilizing are AI models that were built from other countries. So the data that was fed or the data sets that were provided to those AI tools are not data sets that are coming from here in Zambia, or maybe something that would be similar, maybe from like an African country. The data that was fed was from other countries. Now I think the AI tools are just adapting because we keep on prompting them with information Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Speaking of internet infrastructure, we can hear you clearly now. Thank you, Doreen.
I know, right? Yes. Oh, can you also see my screen? All right. Okay, so I'll okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. I was just trying to find out what was the last thing that you had. So maybe I could go back.
I think you can start from risks and challenges.
Okay. Okay, maybe I just go over this slide again.
Sure.
Or do I need to go back to the other slide? Okay, all right. Okay, so like I was mentioning, risks and challenges that came out from the educational sector. The first one being lack of skilled expertise.
Okay. So
people feel that the expertise that we currently have, or it is also evident to what the stakeholders had shared, is not reliable for us to be able to fully adopt these AI tools. Because, like I mentioned, AI, of course, has been in existence, but people have started adopting AI. I think the curriculum that we have does not fully embrace artificial intelligence. So, is to be able to maintain and also implement these AI systems and tools. Another risk and challenge that was identified was ethical concerns. So because we, on the other side, in most African countries, or I would just say here in Zambia, AI models that were developed, and
It looks like we're having some internet challenges. I will step in for Doreen and then she'll take over when her internet stabilizes. Could you kindly confirm that you can see my screen?
We can see the screen, yes.
Thank you. Yeah. I believe she was on risks and challenges. Right. So I'll pick up from resource diversion. So it is a bit of a challenge to divert resources towards things that might be considered non-life threatening at the moment, considering there may be other things that are more pressing. For example, we are in the middle of a drought and also current load shedding constraints that we are facing as a country. So these are some of the risks or challenges that might delay the adoption of AI tools as identified by the participants and the experts in the room on that day. The other one that came up was cost. So we talk about the infrastructure setup. Earlier we spoke about things like data centers or infrastructure to ensure quick and stable internet, amongst other things. And these don't just happen because we wish them to happen, but are quite a bit of a cost. So these are some of the concerns that we need to have at the back of our minds, or some of the challenges that could delay the adoption. We also have lack of skilled expertise. I think we've touched on this already quite a bit in the sessions that we looked at before. But also just to re-emphasize, ensuring that we've got the right skill set, the right people that can train others and allow for this expertise to trickle down along the way. We also identified ethical concerns. So we addressed this as well, issues to do with bias. and representation. So, you know, are we sure that the model is representative of the Zambian people, of, you know, what a typical African looks like? That's one thing. But number two, is the data that is being collected being used ethically? Is it being stored correctly? These are all challenges and risks to look out for. Then we also have reliability and accuracy. I think this was also alluded to above. So just ensuring that even as people interact with these different tools, they have in the back of their mind that it is not always that AI is 100% correct 100% of the time. You know, there may be deviations, and it's important that students don't rely on writing their final dissertation using ChatGPT, because ChatGPT will give information based on the models that it has and that has been trained on. But if it doesn't have a good wealth of knowledge or information around your subject area, say you're writing a paper involving, you know, the happenings in a particular region of Zambia, relying on this data to write your thesis might be detrimental, because it's not always reliable or accurate, because it's not fed. It doesn't have a lot of use from people in our environment yet. So it's also a learning model and is adapting as it goes. So the key recommendation that came out of this session was capacity building. And I think for those that have been with us from the beginning, you will note that this has been consistent throughout the different sessions that were had. So how can we prioritize curriculum updates, you know, to include AI being taught even from, you know, primary, secondary school levels, so that it's not a foreign, world-shaking concept by the time people are leaving, you know, tertiary education or secondary education. But also, how can we ensure that we are preparing the future generations for the skill set and that is needed for the future, so that they're not left behind in comparison to, you know, graduates in other parts of the world or even other parts of Africa. So just ensuring that the skills that are needed are identified, they're integrated into the curriculum, and the right training is given by the right people to ensure that we close the skills gap.
Okay, Tonga, I think I can pick it up now. My network has stabilized. Yes.
Thank you, Doreen.
All right. Okay, you can stop sharing. All right, thank you. All right, so moving on to the last sector that we had the last workshop in, which is law and governance. So for the law and governance, we had 23 stakeholders that came from various law and governance institutions that attended this workshop. And similar to other workshops, we also had a word cloud activity, which allowed them to answer for 2 questions. The first one being, how would you define AI? And also, what are your thoughts on the future of law and governance, and how do you envision technology in it? Like I mentioned earlier again, the words that are more boarded are the ones that came out the most from the stakeholders. So this is just a summary of some of the insights that the stakeholders had shared. So for example, here, how would you define AI? The word that came out the most was artificial intelligence, AI, humans and computer systems, and also machines. And also, what are your thoughts on the future of law and governance, and how do you envision technology in it? What came out the most was AI. We also have effectiveness, we also have future of law, and we have legal space. So moving on, we started off with gathering the use cases of artificial intelligence in law and governance. And one thing that was really highlighted was the automation of routine tasks. So you would agree with me that in the law and governance sector, there's a lot of things to do with document reviewing. So these documents or this information can be fed to AI tools to analyze and provide back information to people in the law and governance sector, and it could also be helpful in terms of drafting contracts that the people in law and governance sector do. And another thing that could also be useful is when people are looking for consultation, instead of them having to reach out maybe to somebody who's a legal practitioner, a chatbot could be implemented just fed with data that is maybe about frequently most asked questions, and that information can be provided to the people instead of them having to reach out maybe to people in the law and governance sector. And then moving on, we went to gathering misconceptions from the stakeholders. So again, job displacement is another fear in the law and governance sector. So people feel that if AI is fully adopted in law and governance, it can displace some jobs. I think similar to an example I gave, if we have somebody that is being called to answer to or provide information about some of the things in law and governance sector, and then we replace that with a chatbot, that means that that person who was handling that has to maybe upskill to have to get another job, or they instantly get to lose their job and are replaced by AI. Another misconception that was highlighted is inaccuracy. So people feel that the information that is provided by AI tools is not correct. An example that was given was when you are maybe even prompting sometimes ChatGPT. When you ask it for information and it doesn't fully know about it, what it begins to do is now to hallucinate about that information, just give you, because it wants to give you a response, it will just grab something off the internet that makes sense and just feed it back to you as a response, which is inaccurate. Another misconception that was highlighted is the accuracy of AI. And now maybe you would be debating to say, why do we have inaccuracy and also accuracy? So like mentioned, we had different stakeholders in the room and different insights were coming out from them. So some stakeholders felt that a misconception around AI is that people think that AI is accurate, and therefore when they need any information, they don't really go and research from maybe books and whatnot. They just go to AI tools and AI systems to get that information, thinking that whatever information is coming out from these AI tools is accurate. Another misconception that was highlighted is data privacy and security, especially that we are talking about law and governance. This is a sector, I think, similar to the health sector that has got data that is very confidential. So people are scared to adopt AI tools because they feel that when they feed the information that they have into these AI tools, it might breach their data or misuse the information that they provide to these AI systems or AI tools. Another misconception that was highlighted was complexity. So stakeholders in law and governance sector are scared to utilize these AI tools because they feel that they need a certain skill set or they need a certain knowledge to be able to utilize these tools. So complexity was another misconception that was highlighted that is hindering people from fully adopting artificial intelligence in law and governance. Another misconception that was highlighted was cost. So the cost that comes with having to access these AI tools and AI systems. So people feel that the cost that is attached to that is something that is making them not to have access to these AI tools, even though we have tools that are free, like the basic ones, I would say, like the free version of ChatGPT. People are still resistant to acquire these AI tools because they feel that the cost that is attached to them is more of like a limit. Another concern was ethical concerns. So because we don't have AI tools that have been fed with the data sets that are here in Zambia, or maybe close enough would be maybe something that's coming from another African country. So people are resistant to adopt these AI tools because they feel that the data set and also things to do with biasness would limit them having to utilize these AI tools or systems. Moving on, we moved to risks and challenges. So one risk and challenge that was identified was over-reliance. So something that was utilized, and I'm hoping that maybe there are people from legal and governance here on the webinar, is the over-reliance of artificial intelligence by something that was mentioned known as junior lawyers, though it's a word that they don't really like to utilize. But the thing is that people that are coming from like from tertiary education right now, because now they know about these artificial intelligence tools, they now don't go and study about maybe the information that they're supposed to know of. They just feed it to ChatGPT or maybe Gemini, and it gives back the information. So now instead of these maybe practitioners or maybe legal consultants having to do the work, they now leave the work to be done by AI. So there's no that balance. People are over relying too much on artificial intelligence to do their work instead of them to do the actual work. The other risk and challenge that was highlighted was data privacy and security. So I think this has also come up a lot in the other sectors where people feel that if they give their personal information to these AI tools, it can be misused for maybe something that is not good, and then it can raise a potential risks to their security. Another risk and challenge that was identified was lack of regulations. So right now we don't have regulations that have been put around the use of AI in different sectors, in particular to this one being law and governance. So there are no rules or regulations that have been put across the utilization of AI in law and governance, like to what information people can feed to these AI tools, what are the limitations, what can they do. So this also poses as a risk and challenge in terms of adopting artificial intelligence in law and governance. And then moving on is inadequate infrastructure. So this, I think, has been mentioned a lot again. The issues to do with electricity, issues to do with internet connectivity, the hardware that's needed, the software. Even right now, for some data centers, because of the load shedding that is happening, you find that they get to lose the data that they have. So the current infrastructure that we have poses as a potential risk for us to fully adopt AI as a country. Another concern that was raised is environmental concerns. So because these AI models or AI systems need a lot of computing power, so now the emissions that are being emitted have really a big effect on the environment. Another potential risk and challenge that was highlighted in the law and governance sector. Another thing that was spoken about is also job displacement. So taking away the jobs of people in law and governance, let's say maybe legal consultants. If you have an AI tool that is able to provide you with legal consultation, then maybe you don't fully need a legal consultant. Again, because AI is fast and efficient. So this poses as a potential risk when it comes to them being displaced by artificial intelligence. Then the recommendations that came from the stakeholders in law and governance was the first one to raise awareness. So to educate people about not only the bad side of artificial intelligence, but also trying to show them the good part of artificial intelligence and how they can utilize it in law and governance. Another thing that came out was regulations and policy. So I think this has also been mentioned a lot in the other sectors. There's definitely need for regulations and policy to be able to govern the use of artificial intelligence across the other sectors that have been mentioned, which is agriculture, business, education, health, and also in the law and governance sector. There's definitely need for regulations and policies so that people know what limitations they have when working with these AI tools, and like how far they can go in terms of development and also implementation. And then another recommendation that was also highlighted is data accessibility. So there's definitely need for us to contextualize these AI tools to the data sets that are from here in Zambia, so that we even get a better outcome when we try and get information from these AI tools. Because remember, artificial intelligence is just about you providing it with data and also instructions, and then it is going to act according to the data that it has been provided or according to the data that it has been trained on. And then another recommendation that was highlighted was need for collaboration. So between the government, the industry, and also academia. Remember that the people that are coming from academia are the ones that are going to practice in the industry. So there's definitely need for that collaboration, so that even as people come from academia, they already know about this artificial intelligence, and they know how they're supposed to go and use it when they go out there in the industry. And also government is definitely supposed to come in with some of the regulations and policies that is going to guide people when they're utilizing artificial intelligence in the industry. Another recommendation that was highlighted was human-centered AI. So what this just means is centering the development of artificial intelligence, centering it to the Zambian context. So not just getting AI tools that are coming from different countries trained on different data sets and bringing them here, but trying as much to have the Zambian people involved when we're coming up with maybe things that came out would be maybe development of regulations, development of policies, and not just maybe having to copy what is being done in other countries and also bringing it to the Zambian context. And then the other recommendation that was given was exploring new business models. So if you're not aware, mostly what legal consultants have to do is that they bill people according to the hours that they spend. So now if we were to adopt AI, meaning that you have efficiency and you're spending less time, which is going to be like a loss for people in the law, I would say like in the dealing with the law firm. So there's definitely need to explore new business models. Maybe they could start billing on a product basis. Instead of them billing according to hours, they could maybe bill according to the AI tool that was utilized and based off the benefit that the person got from the particular consultant. Okay, I will just pause here before I move to the similarities across sectors. So far we've covered all the 5 sectors, which is agriculture, business, health, and also we've touched education and law and governance. So these are some of the insights that came through the 5 sectors. And I think from what has been shared so far, you would agree with me that there were definitely similarities when it came to misconceptions, risks, and challenges, and also some of the recommendations that were provided. I will just pause to take up questions before we move to looking at the similarities that were gathered across the 5 sectors. If you're not able to unmute, please feel free to type in the chat section. Okay. Maybe I would ask for thumbs up if things are okay. We could move a question before we move to the other part. So like I mentioned, with some of the insights that I got from the stakeholders, you will agree with me that there were similarities across the sectors. So these are some of the similarities or the common misconceptions that we gathered across the sectors. So the first one being artificial intelligence will lead to significant job losses across sectors. So people feel that if AI is fully adopted in sectors like agriculture, business, health, education, as well as law and governance, they feel that it's going to displace the jobs that they currently have. Another common misconception was that AI is accessible to large corporations and well-founded organizations. So I think this speaks around to the cost that comes with the implementation and also development of artificial intelligence. So people feel that the only people that can have access to AI tools are maybe these big companies or well-funded organizations. The sectors that highlighted this the most. Another common misconception was that AI requires a high level of technical expertise, hindering adoption. So people think that for them to be able to utilize artificial intelligence, there's a certain level of technical expertise that they need to have. It's a belief that people have about using computers, expertise that you need to have. So this is business, education, and law and governance sector. And always accurate reading to over reliance. So because people feel that artificial intelligence is very accurate, people have this that if AI is limited to tools like ChatGPT, ignoring its broader application. Sectors that highlighted this were business and education. So you would agree with me, though this is more of like a misconception, but people started speaking about AI with the coming of generative AI tools. So now even when somebody speaks about artificial intelligence, the first thing that comes to mind is either ChatGPT or Gemini, but then there's a broader application tools like ChatGPT or Gemini. Those are different sectors. The first one being data privacy and security concerns. The affected sectors were agriculture, business, health, education, and law and governance. So this was affected across all the 5 different sectors. So people feel that the data that is being uploaded to these AI tools poses a security concern if it's going to be used for maybe misusing their information for something, because we don't even know where this data that is being uploaded to these AI tools is sitting. The and challenge was lack of regulatory frameworks. So currently we don't have any regulations in this as a potential risk and challenge. The other risk and challenge that was highlighted was high implementation cost. So the cost of implementing maybe an AI model or customizing your own, the processing that is going to be needed, the hardware, the software, and also the people just to do the maintenance. So all these costs that are attached to this also poses as a potential risk and challenge. The other thing with the current challenge that we have of load shedding, it's really affecting the other things. Like, I think right now we do have an AI tool that should be able to. So these are some of the potential risks and challenges to the adoption of artificial intelligence. So this also came out from all the 5 sectors. Another risk and challenge that was highlighted was cultural resistance and lack of awareness. So because we're used to the traditional method of doing things, and also people don't know about the benefits that comes with utilizing artificial intelligence. So this also is a challenge and is also a risk when it comes to adopting artificial intelligence. Then moving on to the common recommendations that came out from the different sectors, definitely the first one being capacity building. So there's definitely need for us to invest in capacity. What happened is that AI just came around and people started utilizing it and like trying to figure out how to use it. There's no really trainings or programs that are centered around maybe AI use, maybe in the legal sector, or AI use in the agricultural sector. So this is something that we definitely need to invest in. And also the professionals that we currently
Hi,
have.
Doreen,
Remember,
your
I
line is
think like 10
breaking.
years or 15 years ago, people didn't know about this generative AI tool. Okay, is it still now?
Yeah, you're coming in
Tama,
and
can you hear
out,
me?
but it's just became a little worse the last 30 seconds
Okay,
or so.
okay. Would I say this is better?
Yeah, okay, give it another go. Otherwise, I'll step in. Yeah, okay. Right. Moving
Let me
on
give
to
it
the
another
next
try. And education, so there's
recommendation.
definitely.
Moving on to the next recommendation, we have policy development and regulatory frameworks. So how can we develop clear policies and regulations that encompass the end users and all essential stakeholders, that is representative of us as Zambians and also as Africans, and not just reliant on the models that we've seen in other parts of the world. We also need policies that ensure safe and ethical AI use. This is a big concern, and that address data governance, privacy, and security. Another shared recommendation was the promotion of awareness, was promoting awareness and reducing misconceptions. So in order for us to reduce misconceptions, it is important that we create awareness about AI and the positive spin to it. For example, AI is not out to get your job, but is rather here as a complement, not competition. How can we talk about the benefits and also the limitations so that people are not over reliant on AI and leaving AI to do your job while you go out and do something else? How can we, communicate the role that AI can play in ensuring efficiency and increase in revenue and or desired outcomes, as well as the broader applications of AI beyond it just being used for generative material, referring directly here to tools such as ChatGPT or Gemini or even Meta AI. Another key recommendation that was shared across the different sectors was collaboration and knowledge sharing. It is essential that for us to see the success that we want to see, that things do not happen in silos. So knowledge sharing, open exchange of information, of progress, of models, learnings, courses, everything that will translate to a more widely adopted use of AI is shared across not just different sectors, but amongst different stakeholders as well. So how can we encourage collaboration amongst the stakeholders? Also just sharing data, knowledge, and expertise, as well as developing localized AI solutions. So ensuring that the learning models are being fed with information that represents, the Zambian context and the African context as well. Finally, actually, this is not the last one. Additionally, we also have recommendations around addressing infrastructure and accessibility issues. I think this has been touched upon quite a bit. So I'll move on to the next one. Yes, Doreen, please. Just change the slide for me. Okay. Right. Addressing infrastructure and accessibility issues. I think that has been covered quite a bit. But just to touch briefly on it, so how can we improve infrastructure in underserved areas? But even in the areas that are currently being serviced, how can we go around the current challenges and constraints that we've spoken about directly regarding the use of electricity and how the lack of it is affecting internet connectivity within, places like Lusaka, which typically should have a good connectivity. How do we provide the necessary technological tools that are needed, like Doreen mentioned, whether it's hardware or software, for people to be able to operate efficiently and for us to close this gap? Another recommendation was developing localized solutions. So conduct pilots and experiments with local data, develop tailored AI solutions for specific needs, demonstrate value and potential impact. Then we've got ethical considerations and data privacy. So this also cut across the different sectors. So how do we ensure that the data is being used ethically, that we are not, being conduits or coordinating or peddling the unethical use of data by us trying to get our hands in on this AI process and this AI expansion? How do we ensure data privacy and security? So when looking at ethical considerations and data privacy, we also have to look at where our data is being stored, and who has access to it, who is in charge of it, whether it's through data centers being built locally, or that we get into partnerships with countries where that can be done. These are conversations that need to be had. But also it's important to regularly evaluate and monitor the AI systems to ensure that there are no gaps or leaks that could be taken advantage of. And then we have supporting balanced AI adoption, which came out in a few of the sectors as well. So how can we emphasize a balanced approach to adoption of AI? What we mean here by balanced approach, for those that may have joined us a little later, is ensuring that while we're creating awareness about the use of AI and the benefits of it, we are also ensuring that we are setting up correctly the relevance and the need for human oversight to accompany this AI tool. So not so much to say that, here we've got AI now, forget about it, you don't need to do anything, but ensuring that people are aware that there is some form of oversight that will be required. Also combining human expertise with AI tools as a complement rather than a competition, and emphasizing that AI is there to enhance human roles rather than to replace them. So to help us do our daily tasks better, more efficiently, to streamline processes rather than to replace us in the execution of those processes. Thank you so much for your time. I think we've come to the end of the content part of our presentation. Doreen, are you back and stable?
Yes, Tonga, can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes. Okay, so I think I'll open it up for questions and hand over to Doreen from here. If there are any questions that you have, please feel free to put in the chat. You can raise your hand or even unmute yourself and we will get to you. After that, Doreen will take us through just a short interactive bit that we could do together in order for us to get further insights from you. Thank you. Are there any questions? I assume that if Doreen is facing this challenge, a number of our attendees on the webinar are also facing this challenge with the internet.
Okay. If you're not able to unmute.
Hey, can you hear me?
Confirm you're able to get me now.
I can hear you now.
I can hear you.
Okay, I think we can move to the second part of the activity. Tonka, just help me stop sharing your screen so that I can share mine. Okay. So like I had mentioned earlier, after sharing these insights with you, we just want to get back some feedback. So these are the two questions that we're going to be answering to in the Jamboard activity. The first one being, what key points from the presentation resonated with you the most and why? And the second one being, were there any areas that you felt needed more clarity or detail? So we will do this in the Jamboard. I will be sharing my screen to just run you through how to utilize the Jamboard. But before I do that, I will send a link in the chat section. Just let me know if you are able to have access to that. Okay, so I've posted a link in the chat section. Just click on it and then it will take you to something that looks like this being shared on the screen. Okay, I can see one person has joined. Maybe I could give it like 3 or 5, then we can begin the activity. Let me know if you're having any challenges. Okay, I will share the link again just in case you missed it. Okay, I can see 2 people. Can we get 3 more? Then we can get started with the activity. Please don't be hesitant to join the Jamboard. We also want to hear from you and get some feedback from the presentation that we made. Okay, I think 4 is good enough. So the tool that we're going to be utilizing to just get feedback or insights from you is called a Jamboard. So I will just run you through what you need to use on this Jamboard. So when you look to your left, you have this sidebar that has got a lot of tools. But for today's activity, we'll just concentrate on this icon here that has the sticky note. So when you click here, you have this pop up as a sticky note. So I'll just repeat my instructions again. Once this is open, you're now open to your Jamboard. Onto your left, you have this sidebar that has got these icons. And then when you click on this icon that has the sticky note, when you click on it, it opens up a sticky note. So on this sticky note, you're able to add your thoughts. So maybe I'd give an example to say, this is my thought. And you're also able to change colors here in case you want to. So once you're done adding your thoughts here, what you do now is save, and the sticky note will be added to the Jamboard. I think you can see that. And then once you're done, you can click on cancel, and your sticky note, you'd be able to see it here. If you want to come back and edit your thoughts, you can click back on this sticky note. And then when you click on it, it will give you these 3 dots, and then just click on them and you'll be given the option to edit. So when you click here, the sticky note will open again and you'll be able to edit. Let me know if those instructions are clear before we begin with the activity. Okay, if you're able to give a thumbs up reaction, you can, so that I know that the instructions are clear, and then we can begin. Or even you can even type in the chat section if the instructions are clear. Okay, I will ask again, are we good? Do we begin with the activity, or you need more clarity on how to utilize the Jamboard? Okay, I will take it that there are no questions. Okay, I can see a thumbs up from David. Yes, thank you, Mr. Comfiti. Thank you. Okay, so we can begin by answering that people have already started answering, which is good. So for the first question, we have, what key points from the presentation resonated with you the most and why? So from some of the misconceptions, use cases, risks and challenges and recommendations that were given across the 5 sectors, or from everything that was given during the presentation, what resonated with you the most and why? So I will give it 5 minutes for us to just type that. I think maybe we can give it 6, and then we can come back at 11:03 to just see the insights that are going to be coming from you. So we can come back at 11:07. So in the meantime, keep typing your thoughts on the Jamboard, and then we will get back and see some of the insights that have been shared. If you're having any challenges accessing the Jamboard, please let me know, and I will be able to help you with that. Okay, I can only see one thought. Please feel free to type. If you have any questions on how you need to type your thoughts on the Jamboard, please feel free to raise your hand and that will be answered. Okay, I can see and Alicia was saying they are failing to access. Is it that it's not loading, or are you able to share what the problem is?
Hi, Doreen. Sorry, it's saying item not found.
Hi. The screenshot of the problem? Okay, I think we are past the 6 minutes that we had. So I will just share the tab that has the responses that have been shared on the Jamboard. Before maybe I even read out what has been shared, do we have any two volunteers that would want to speak to the thoughts that they gave on the Jamboard? Just any two volunteers? If you want to volunteer, just feel free to unmute yourself or you can raise your hand just to speak to the thought that you highlighted on the Jamboard. Do we have any volunteer?
Hi, Doreen.
Hi. Hi, Ian.
Yeah,
Please go
so
ahead.
okay, yeah, so I gave a thought on regulation of AI, development of AI models. So what stood out on that is because what is obtaining on the ground right now is that most developers are using pre-existing data sets to develop a bit chatbots, and which lack most of the local representation or cultural representation. That's why you find that the results or the quality of output that we get from these AI models is not really representing our local data here. So I think there's great need to really regulate so that we fine tune to what can really speak to our cultural aspect. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ian. Do we have another volunteer that would want to speak to the thought that they shared on the Jamboard? Before we move to answering the other question. Okay. We can move to the second part. So I think you have noticed when you've opened the Jamboard that we have one of two. So this is more of like a slide. So when you click on the next one, you can go to the next slide or frame. So when you click on this, you'll be able to see the other question. Let me know if you have like difficulties seeing the next question. We'll be able to help with that. So the next one is, were there any areas that you felt needed more clarity or detail? So if you feel that there were any areas during the presentation that needed to be clarified, or you thought that there was maybe more detail that had to be given to that, please share that thought on your sticky note. In case you have just joined, this is a Jamboard that we're using to gather insights or feedback from you. So when you go to your left, you have these icons, and then when you want to share your thought, just come on this icon that has the sticky note. So when you click here, it will open up a sticky note and you're able to type your thoughts there. And then once you're done, you can click on save and then it will save your sticky note, as you can see from there. Then once you're done, you can go ahead and cancel. If you want to add to your thoughts or you want to change, just click on the sticky note itself, and then it will give you these three options, and you can choose to edit your thoughts. So when you click on edit, you'll be able to edit. So again, I will give it 6 minutes for us to just share our thoughts on some of the areas that we feel needed more clarity or had to be given more detail during the presentation. So we have 6 minutes, and I think we can come back at 11:18 to come and see the insights that are going to be shared. Once again, if you are having difficulties accessing the Jamboard, please let us know, and then we'll be able to help with that. For those that have just joined, we are having a Jamboard activity where we just want to get feedback. I'll be sharing the link again, just pasting it in the chat section. So when you click on that link, you will be able to see something like this. If you're able to see the first slide that has some of the insights that were shared to the first question, just click on the next frame and it will take you to the next frame or slide. And then you can put your thoughts here. If it's the first time using the Jamboard, you are able to access the tools on your left side here. So you click on this icon that has a sticky note and you can add your thoughts here. Once you're done, you click on save. And then when you want to edit, you can click on the sticky note itself and click on the 3 dots, and then you're able to edit the thought that you had submitted. So do let us know in the chat section if you're having any challenges, and we'll be able to help with that. Please feel free to type your thoughts. Like I mentioned, we have 6 minutes. And just so you know, the Jamboard is anonymous, so feel free to type in your thoughts. Nobody will really know that this was the person that typed these thoughts. So just feel free to share your thoughts. Okay, we have 3 more minutes. Or if you're having challenges sharing your thoughts on the Jamboard, you can as well as type them in the chat section, and then we'll be able to copy that to the Jamboard. We have 2 more minutes. If you still have thoughts that you'd even want to add to the first frame, you can do that as well in case you joined in late. If you have any questions on how to access the Jamboard, you can let me know and I'll be able to help with that. Okay, our 6 minutes is done. And I think I can see 2 people that shared their thoughts. I would just ask if there's any volunteer that wants to speak to what they highlighted on the sticky note. Do we have any? I think it would be good to hear. I can see on the sticky note that is shared, I need more clarity on the regulatory framework for AI adoption because it is essential to ensure that our implementation of AI complies with legal and ethical standards. So it would also be good to hear, is it just generally on the regulatory framework, or is there something in particular that you would need clarity on? Or is it generally? So I think that would also be good to hear from the person that shared this thought. Same for the other sticky note. The Zambia is a nation with over 72 tribes. How are we going to make AI more inclusive in its adoption stages? Would there be any need of developing different language models? So I think this is more of a question. Is there anyone that would want to pick up the question that is on the second sticky note that says Zambia is a nation with over 72 tribes? How are we going to make AI more inclusive in its adoption stages? Would there be need of developing different language models? Is there anyone that would want to answer to that? I think there's also another question in the chat section. Yes, Parity, please go ahead.
So first and foremost, I would just want to get some clarity. I've heard the mention of 72 tribes and language models. So just trying to ensure like it's not about the actual languages, but the like language models, machine learning models. Yeah. So just I don't know if the person that wrote could clarify, considering now they have mentioned the tribe in the question.
Is the person that shared that thought able to clarify if you're speaking of the actual languages or you're speaking of maybe language models that have to do with AI?
Language models that have to do with AI.
Okay.
Because mostly with Zambia, one thing which makes us Zambians is our motto, which is one Zambia, one nation. So meaning we include everyone in whatever that we do. So there's need of including each and every tribe on board. But is there a way of developing language models that can cater for almost everyone?
Okay. Thank you for the question. So the first thing, looking at what has been done already, we have different organizations that are trying to ensure they build models that are able to understand the local languages that we have. So for now, we can move away from the tribes, but we just stick to the languages. Yeah, so far, if you try a good number of language models, you'd find that they have a basic understanding and they have kept on training them. So I think by training these models, we can actually manage to um, be more inclusive. But the most difficult task is achieving universal usability when it comes universal inclusivity when it comes to the spoken languages. Yeah, because it would really be difficult for us to even maybe translate some things into other local languages. So it may take quite a long time, but we might be getting closer day by day. Yeah, as of course, people have kept on improving these models. Yeah, so I think even as we are trying to build models locally using local data, we we should have that into consideration. Yeah, but it would definitely be achievable, but it won't be soon. Yeah.
All
All
right,
right, thank you.
thank you. Thank you for that, Parity. Does anyone want to add to what Parity has mentioned? Okay. I can see a response from Tong. I think this is to a question that was shared in the chat section around how would include more stakeholders like the government. I think there's a response from Taonga in the chat section. I'll just read it out maybe for those that are not able to see in the chat. So this is a very good question. The hope is that this conversation can be taken up at different fora, such as the public-private discussion forums, which is, I think, the PPDF, of which the government is also part of, and other initiatives such as this, where key stakeholders can be brought together to present a united voice. So that is in response to Geoffrey Mowa's question on how we can bring stakeholders like the government to such initiatives all together. Does anyone want to add to that? And I think also for some of the workshops that we had, we did at least manage to have some government representatives. Some of them couldn't make it due to other commitments. But I think, like Taonga has said, it would be good to keep on having these conversations so that we try as much to include the government representatives as well. Parity, is that a hand?
Oh, sorry, it's an odd hand.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so we've managed to answer to the two questions that we had for our Jamboard. This was just good for us to get feedback from you on how the presentation was, if it resonated with some of you, and to some of the things that you're already encountering when it comes to artificial intelligence, and also where you needed like clarity the most. Because remember that Bongo Hive and TEDx were just facilitators in this process. In this process, and then the stakeholders were the ones that were coming up with these insights on misconceptions, risks, and challenges, as well as recommendations. So it's just good to hear where you need more clarity on, so that even as we host similar initiatives, would be able to make sure that we try as much to gather more detailed insights from the stakeholders so that we keep on bettering initiatives like these ones. So moving on, we'll have a Q&A session. So if there is any question that you have around the presentation that was made, or anything that is maybe resonating to what TEDx and Bongo Hive were doing around the facilitation of these AI community workshops, please feel free to ask. You can send your question in the chat section, or you can as well as just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Okay,
So
good.
we'll give it.
Oh,
You please go ahead.
yes. I joined a bit late, where I missed some points, especially in the health sector, or to do with the health sector. So, like, I'm working on an application which is going to address some of the challenges that are being faced in the health sector. But my question is slightly out of context. Just wanted to hear your opinion if it would be right for me to integrate AI at the moment in the same application, looking at the fact that we have got so many gaps in terms of regulations, or maybe I have to wait a bit longer before I can incorporate it.
Okay, thank you for that question. Does anyone want to pick it up?
Maybe I could contribute. I think, Mr. Stephen, it would depend primarily on why you're integrating AI. In what way are you would you want to integrate AI, and would it serve as a barrier from people using your app if you were to integrate AI in providing this solution? If it would be, for example, a chatbot, I don't see that being a barrier in any way. But if it would negatively affect people's adoption of your platform because it hinges primarily on their ability to interact or to use the AI tools in a way that would, not deliver value to them or for you, then that would be a conversation worth having.
Thank you for that, Taonga. Stephen, is that helpful?
Yes, it is helpful, but let me wait for other people to ask their questions. I might come back.
Okay. All right. Or does anyone want to add to the question that was asked by Stefan? If not, we are still taking more questions. If you have any questions regarding the presentation that was made or to anything in relation to the presentation or the workshops that we facilitated, please feel free to unmute and ask, or you can as well as send it in the chat section. Okay, please feel free to unmute and ask the question, or you can as well just share your question in the chat section and I will be able to read it out. Okay, maybe Stefan, did you want to ask in regards to the question that you asked earlier? Is there maybe another question you want to ask to get more context?
Yes, madam. Just wanted to find out if at all we have any local company that helps in the making of chatbots for, let's say, business entities, AI chatbots.
Okay. Do we have Martin on the call? Or maybe if somebody wants to pick it up, they can.
So I suggest, Mr. Stephen, please feel free to send us an email. Bongo Hive team also does create chatbots, but they can connect you to others if you want it for individual use, as opposed to like a corporate rate. So we're happy to have this conversation with you bilaterally. You can just send us an email.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, do we have any other questions? I will give it a minute and then we can move to the closing remarks. Okay, looks like there are no questions. We have come to the end of the webinar. I think for me, I would just like to thank everyone that took their time to join us during the webinar, either from the start or if you joined us in the middle of the webinar. We're really grateful for your time, as well as the feedback that was shared during the Jamboard activity and also the questions that were asked. This was one of the outcomes of the AI workshops that we facilitated in agriculture, business, education, health, as well as law and governance. So we wanted to share these insights with the stakeholders that attended these workshops and also just people who are interested to hear insights that came out from those workshops. So it's really good that there's a lot of interested parties to hear on what of misconceptions, risks and challenges or recommendations that were highlighted by different sectors. And also the feedback that we have gotten from the Jamboard is very variable, and we will get it and also implement it in some of the future initiatives that are similar to this, so that we can help better those initiatives. I would now just hand over to Alice, just to ask if Alice, you're on the call, just to give some closing remarks, and then Tanga, you could also give some closing remarks before we close.
Thank you, Doreen. Thank you, everyone, as well, for your participation and joining us all today. Those of you who did participate in the individual sector workshops and those who are new to seeing how everything came together. I think, as it's been said, this is one of the many efforts that are ongoing right now in Zambia, in Lusaka, around exploring these new technologies. And we hope that this will be another way to continue the conversation. And we hope that in your individual spaces, you will, again, as well, continue to explore these technologies and continuing this conversation of how we can explore the opportunities while as well mitigating the risks. Thanks again. Please feel free to follow TEDxLusaka on social media. We do have our upcoming main event next month. Thank you again, and thanks as well to Bongo Hive, our wonderful partner in this and many other events. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Alice. Tanga, you can go ahead.
Just to echo Alice's sentiments, thank you so much. We appreciate you taking the time out on a Friday, and even, for those that attended the other sessions, taking time out each time, carving time just to lend your voice to these conversations. We assure you that it is not in vain. And yes, please, let's continue having these conversations in our different areas and spheres of influence and debunk the myths and create awareness about the positivity and the positive side and the benefits of AI, even as we tear down some of the misconceptions. Thank you so much for your time, and I wish you all a wonderful day.
All right, thank you so much, Tawanga. Before we just drop off on the call, just to highlight that the presentation is going to be shared with you. We have everybody that registered for the webinar, so that is going to be shared to your email. And also, if you missed, you can go and watch it on our socials, which is Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So just search for Bongo Hive and you'll be able to find the session there. It was being live streamed. I think this is it from us, and we do hope that you'll be able to join us in similar future initiatives. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, I think this is just Bongo Hive and Alice. Alice, are you still on the call?
Sorry, before we proceed, can we just end the stream?
Okay.